using a Ouija board is just like leaving your front door open in a bad neighborhood. Because Ed and Lorraine Warren, they felt that any spirit coming through a Ouija board was an inhuman spirit and it was bad.
Hey everyone, it's Bridget Marquardt here with a brand new episode of Ghost Magnet. Thank you so much for listening and welcome back. Today's guest is Heather Taddy. Taddy is a paranormal researcher and investigator and is known for her work on A&E's hit television series Paranormal State, which is based on real-life investigations from the world-renowned Penn State Paranormal Research Society, PRS. While studying film and French at Penn State University, Taddy trained as a field investigator for PRS while also traveling the country helping families living in haunted houses. She's known for isolating herself in haunted locations' most active area while documenting her experiences. Taddy has worked alongside the legendary Lorraine Warren and was inspired to join PRS after attending one of her lectures. She currently stars on Travel Channel's Alien Highway, based off a New York Times best-selling book called The 37th Parallel with UFO researcher Chuck Zukowski. Together, they pursue UFO cases that authorities ignore while searching for definitive proof of UFOs along America's Alien Highway. Taddy has guest starred on episodes of Portals to Hell with her longtime friend Katrina Weidman and Jack Osborne. Currently, she's working on a documentary series with Weidman called Travel the Dead. When she isn't sitting alone in a creepy basement, talking to herself or looking to the skies for the unknown, Taddy is a musician, roller skater, lover of vintage clothing, creating costumes, photography, and horror films. We have a few things in common, that's for sure. Looking forward to all her spooky stories, but before we get started, let's check in with Lisa Morton for this week's Ghost Report.
Hey everyone, it's Lisa here with this week's Ghost Report. We've talked about Ouija boards in the past, including going all the way back to talking boards, which preceded and inspired Ouija boards, but I thought it might be fun to talk about the role that Ouija boards have played in horror movies. The Ouija board's scary bad rep really started in the early 20th century when the Catholic Church waged a war against them as they grew more popular around the time of World War I. But one movie released at the end of 1973 really tarnished, or should that be polished, the Ouija board's image forever: The Exorcist. The classic story of the possession of 12-year-old Regan McNeil really starts the moment her mom discovers the Ouija board in the basement, and Regan says she's been using it to contact a spirit she calls Captain Howdy. Who can forget that moment when the planchette slides across the board on its own? In 2014, Hasbro, the toy company that makes the Ouija board, got together with Blumhouse Productions and Michael Bay to give us the first movie really about everyone's favorite seance item, cleverly calling their film Ouija. Centering on a group of teens whose use of a Ouija board unleashes demonic forces, the movie was a massive hit and spawned a prequel 2 years later, Ouija Origin of Evil. If you've enjoyed The Haunting of Hill House or Midnight Mass on Netflix, you should totally check out Ouija Origin of Evil because it was co-written and directed by Mike Flanagan, who was also the force behind those miniseries, and it's a really good movie, complete with a fraudulent medium who gets a dose of the real thing. The original Paranormal Activity also made great use of a Ouija board, as did The Conjuring 2. And then, of course, there's that 80s movie that had one of the best titles ever, Witchboard. Here's hoping that whatever you conjure up doesn't light your board on fire. Until next week, this is Lisa moving the planchette to goodbye.
Thank you, Lisa. Heather, thank you so much for doing the show today.
Thanks for having me, Bridget.
Yes, so nice to meet you.
You too.
So your partner in crime, Katrina Weidman, we've had her on the show before. You guys were in the same program at Penn State.
Yeah, so we met in the club PRS, which was a university-backed paranormal club at
Which
Penn
is
State.
amazing, by the way.
Totally amazing. Like, it was...
And so unique. I don't know of any other university that does that. I mean, maybe it's out there, but...
Yeah, I think at that time it was pretty rare, but it was a really serious club. And I just started going to meetings, and I remember seeing this girl with these, and I remember her shoes. She had these really cool red sneakers on, and I was like, I'm going to sit beside this girl. So I sat down beside her, and we just immediately became friends. And we've been friends ever since meeting that day at Penn State.
She told us a little bit about PRS, but can you, in case they missed that episode or don't know about it, can you tell us a little bit about what that was and what you guys did there?
Of course, yeah. So the Penn State Paranormal Research Society was started by a student who grew up having really intense paranormal experiences that he couldn't explain. And he kind of didn't really have anyone that believed him. So in 2001, he started this club at Penn State. And what really impressed me about the club is that it was super strict and serious. Like, it wasn't just joining a club, it was like adding another class onto your curriculum, because I was training as a field investigator, and it was like really serious. Like, you really had to go through like a rigorous training process to be in the club. And the club had, like, when you went through the training, it had like a 72% dropout rate. So no one really stuck around, because it was literally like adding a whole other class onto your college schedule. And when you think about it, like, who really wants to do that? But Katrina and I, we stuck through it, and we went through all the training. And like, when I joined the club, I had no idea about a television show. I joined it because I've always had an interest in the subject. And like the 5th or 6th meeting in, they were having this casting call. They were putting these flyers all over campus, and I was like, I'll try out for this, because I wanted to gain access to really haunted locations, because I wanted to have experiences. So I filled out this like 20-page pamphlet, went to this casting call, and then a couple weeks later, these producers called me. They came to my dorm to film me, took all these videos of me, and then next thing I know, I'm like traveling the country and helping families with haunted houses.
That's amazing, though. And so exciting. So before you started taking these classes for ghost hunting, to be a field investigator, did you already have experiences in the paranormal, or were you just interested in it, or where'd you lie with all of that?
So for as long as I can remember, I've just always had an interest in all things supernatural, aliens, everything. So I didn't grow up in a haunted house or anything, but all of my experiences, you could call them paranormal, stemmed from the use of a Ouija board. I was really, really intrigued by Ouija boards. And when I was young, I literally used to like sneak through a crack in my brother's bedroom door and eavesdrop on him and his friends playing with a Ouija board. And they had a lot of really weird experiences. So, I was like 8 or 9, and I remember stealing his Ouija board and taking it to all these haunted places with like groups of friends and just trying to like get stuff to happen. So the Ouija board really got me into all of this. And then of course, reading about Ed and Lorraine Warren's cases and things like that.
What kind of things was your brother having happen with the Ouija board?
Oh man. I can't even remember specific things. I think it told them when they were gonna die. Really, I just remember it was like creepy enough for him to warn me never to play it. And of course I was like, I'm gonna steal it and play it. So I would just steal it and literally like break into haunted abandoned buildings with my friends, and just cause trouble and just try to film evidence, and I had a lot of weird experiences. My cousin and I would always play the Ouija board because it always like worked more with us than it did with other people. And one time our grandmother had come through and gave us this information that we went back to our moms and were like, the Ouija board told us this about grandma. And I remember there was a piece of private information we went to our mothers about, and our moms were like, there's no way you could have known this information. Like, this is really private family stuff. There's no way. So they were like really amazed, and they're like, you can't play the Ouija board anymore. So, but yeah, I mean, those were kind of my experiences that started with all of this.
Yeah. Were your parents supportive of paranormal stuff or not really?
Yeah, my dad had a lot of experiences, mostly with UFOs growing up. So he was definitely open to it. And once I got on TV, my parents just thought it was like so cool to just be flipping through the channels and see their daughter on TV.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
They were super supportive.
Yeah. So my first experience started with a Ouija board as well.
Yeah.
And definitely, things started happening after that and piqued my curiosity. And I've been doing stuff with the paranormal ever since then. And that was when I was 12. So for a really long time now.
Yeah, it's a very interesting tool. And, growing up and reading about spiritualism and the fact that, the Ouija board served as a way for people to deal with grief, after the Civil War. And the whole history of spiritualism really, really fascinated me. And it basically led to the birth of paranormal investigating. So it's like a huge, huge important movement to this field.
Yeah. Well, my first experience with the Ouija board was sort of negative. I had kind of negative things happening afterwards. So I swore it off for the longest time. Oh, I don't play with Ouija boards and everything. And then one time somebody made a comment to me like, well, what's the difference between that and a spirit box or a pendulum or dowsing rods or whatever? And I was like, okay, she's right. I'm going to go get a Ouija board.
I mean, that's true because no matter what you do, you're at risk for something. So it is kind of, when you really think about it, it's all kind of the same thing.
It's all communicating or trying to communicate, attempting to communicate.
Exactly.
Does that program still exist at Penn State?
I don't think it exists at Penn State because none of us go there anymore. But I think there might still be some version of it out there. I'm actually not really sure.
Yeah. So we talked about how you guys met. That was my next question. Tell me about some of the spookiest cases you guys went to.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Let's see where to start. I took notes because I was like, I can't leave out the most interesting cases. So,
wow, you're prepared.
I am. I'm very prepared because if you watch me and all the shows that I've been in, I always just have a little notebook and I'm always taking notes and like documenting things. I've always been like that. But I'd have to say one of the scariest that comes to mind was actually one of my cases. It was probably the 3rd or 4th season of Paranormal State, and it took place at a church in Topeka, Kansas. And 3 caretakers were living in this church, and they were trying to renovate it to turn it into like a community center. Because I think before that it had been abandoned for a long time, and homeless people had been in there. People had done rituals in there. So it was really, really run down. And as they were renovating, they had to completely halt the renovations because they had so much activity. And this is in a church.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and the activity like really scared them. They had heard footsteps. They never really felt like they were alone. Objects would go missing. The historical information that they knew that people had told them were that a former priest had killed a young girl in the boiler room and then he hung himself on the 3rd floor. So that's really creepy, but we couldn't really confirm that historically when we did our research. But when I was there, I was with an investigator named Ryan, and we were down. There was one area in the Sunday school bathrooms where no one would go. They were just completely creeped out. We couldn't get them to go down there. They just stopped. They would never go down there. So we went down, and I have a camera and I'm filming. I think I'm just filming like a closet or something. And there's a camera guy here and a camera guy here. And my fellow investigator, Ryan, was standing in the doorway of an old shower. He was just standing there. And we weren't even like talking at the time. And all of a sudden I looked over and it looked as if something pulled him with force, grabbed him by like the back of his hood of his coat and yanked him back, and he fell on the ground. And for me, I was just speechless because one second we're just all standing there and then all of a sudden he's just like on the ground, and I saw it happen. And it was just like the scariest thing I've ever seen. And just to see the look of shock on his face, and he's a very seasoned investigator. So to see him scared, it was like, wow, something really with force yanked him back. So that's one case that always stands out to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, yeah. And still there's like no explanation to what could have caused that.
Yeah, and when there's physical contact like that, it's extra scary.
Yes, exactly.
Because you don't know what they're capable of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm interested to see. Obviously, probably this caretakers probably don't live there anymore. But I've thought about this place a lot, and I wonder if anybody ever got to like finish the remodeling, and if it's a running church now. I'd love to know that.
Yeah, I would love to know what's going on there, and if they're still experiencing things.
Mm-hmm.
What about some of the other cases?
Let's see. So one of the weirdest ones to me, so we did a lot of cases where children were involved, and that was kind of always a whole other level. And I remember this one case we did, it was called Sixth Sense. And it was a 6-year-old boy named Matthew, who he moved into this townhouse with his family, and he started seeing dead people. He started seeing the spirit of a young boy, and he saw this boy, and he described him as always having something around his neck. And one time the spirit said to him, "I want to find the man who cut down the trees." So before this family moved into this current house, there was a guy in his 20s. He was schizophrenic, and his name was Timmy. And his dad had passed away and his mom was leaving to go to a nursing home. So the first time in his life he was going to be alone. He took a rifle and went into the woods behind the house and he shot himself.